assisting us in our PBB journey, and she is our consultant with ResourceX.
Thank you so much, Chris, and thank you to everyone who has joined us today. You are in the final step of the PBB implementation. For those of you who have participated along the way, congrats, you've made it to the last step. For those of you who are new to the process, welcome. This is an exciting step, very integral to the PBB process, and it's my favorite step of the entire process. So with that, I think we can just dive into this training. I wanted to provide a little bit of background of what priority-based budgeting, or PBB, is. So we're just gonna do maybe 2 to 3 minutes on kind of introducing PBB, and then we'll dive into the scoring and peer review for everybody. So when we talk about implementing a priority-based budget, we typically break it out into these 3 questions. What do we do? What does it cost? And why are we in business? The what do we do is the program inventory identification. So each department went through and identified the services that they provide both to the organization to help it run and to the community. The programs are the backbone of your priority-based budget, and they help to tell the story of the City of Lee's Summit. The what does it cost piece, all of the line items from your budget have been uploaded into the online software through ResourceX, and each of those line items has been allocated to the programs that were identified by the departments. And then finally, the why are we in business? So you all have gone through a process where results were identified specific to your city. Those are based on your strategic plan, business plan, and community survey. This is how we're going to connect those programs that have been identified and assigned a cost to your mission. So if we look a little bit more into each one of these steps, so one of the first steps is to think about the programs or services that are offered by your organization. These are bigger than tasks, they are action-oriented, and they can either serve the community or be needed internally to run the organization. We break those into 2 categories, community and governance, and I will refer to those designations throughout this presentation. So community is external facing and governance is internal facing. Moving to the cost allocation phase, this is when line items are allocated to the programs. We allocate personnel line items by percentage of time spent on each program, and your operating costs were allocated by dollar amount associated with each program. This information is compiled into a full program cost, and knowing that full program cost will be helpful as you all move into the decision-making and communicating phases of your PBB implementation. Some questions that this phase particularly speaks to, it helps to identify where you spend your time, where staff is spending their time. It gives you a total program cost so that you can evaluate whether or not you feel like that program is costing too much or you would like to be spending more time or resources on that program. And then it also helps to compare the program cost with any program-specific revenue. And we consider that any fees for service or any grants that can be applied specifically to a program. Today, we're going to focus on the results piece because this is what peer review is going to evaluate. So the City of Lee's Summit went through and identified the priorities that are important to achieving the mission of your city. We refer to these as results. This was all pulled from existing documentation that your city had already had on hand. Additionally, there will be 5 program attributes, which I will probably refer to as BPAs. And those are mandate, reliance, demand, population served, and cost recovery. These are brought by ResourceX to the implementation to help better describe programs. Sometimes the level of mandate, or if there is cost recovery, is not captured in a strategic plan or a business plan. So these just help to further describe those programs and to help with decision making in the future. So we go through two phases of scoring. First is department scoring, next is peer review, and we use these results and their definitions and the BPAs and their definitions to just demonstrate how the programs align with your priorities. Going a little further into that, the results that are specific to your organization help to answer some of these questions. What programs would you want to increase a service level to more positively impact the organization or the community? If you could free up resources, where would you want to reallocate those to? Where would you want to reallocate those resources from? And then also, you can start to look at your budget as associated with a specific priority. Like I said, the basic program attributes help to further describe each program. So are you required to offer the program? Are you the only provider of the service in your community? Has there been an increase or decrease in the demand of the service over time? Do you receive any program-specific revenue, again, fees for services or grants? And then who benefits from each program? Okay, now that we have kind of gone through the basics of PBB, those are the four main steps: program inventory identification, cost allocation, and then we break scoring into scoring and peer review. So we're going to go through and take a look at scoring from a very high level, and then we'll dive into peer review. We'll talk about why we peer review. We'll go into an example from our database, and then we'll talk about how you're going to accomplish this task. So phase one of scoring is department scoring, and I believe many of you participated in that exercise. But this is to determine from the department perspective how programs align with the goals of the city. So once we have the results identified, we ask the departments to go in and determine the alignment of each program from their perspective as the subject matter expert for each of those programs. Your departments best know what those programs are and what they're meant to accomplish, so that first level of scoring is very important. So departments go through all of their programs and align them with each one of the results and each one of the basic program attributes. And to be specific, we have a set of results for community-facing programs, and we have a set of results for governance-facing programs, and each one is evaluated against the appropriate set of results. Then the scores are entered into online PBB, and the departments can enter comments to better explain why they got to that particular score assignment. All of the programs are evaluated on a 0 to 4 scale. 4 is this program is essential to the successful achievement of this particular result. We have strong influence, some influence, minor influence, and then a 0 is this program has no influence on the successful achievement of this result. So each program that you all will interact with from the peer review perspective has already been assigned a score value, and this is just the basic breakdown of what that scoring means. So just to kind of put you in the mind space of where a department score started, if we look at a program, benefits administration, and we consider one of the governance results, which is stewardship, how would somebody go through and evaluate a program against this particular result? We have an overarching definition to embrace resource stewardship to mitigate risk and foster sustainability. And then we have 4 supporting definitions that kind of help to answer the question of how each program influences that particular result. So in this area, resource stewardship, risk mitigation, long-term focus, and resiliency. So the first question, and these questions were targeted at department scoring, but they will be really beneficial for peer review as well. So what degree of influence does the program have on the ability to achieve the result? Again, we're looking at this 0 to 4 scale. 0, it has no influence on the ability to achieve the result, to a 4, which is, it is essential to the ability to achieve the result. Another helpful question to ask, if this program went away, would the city still be able to achieve the result successfully? I find that this question is maybe the best place to start if you are trying to consider the value of the program in the scoring scenario. Just to state it plainly, no program in your inventory will score all 4s in every result area, and no program will score all 0s. And we encouraged the department users to provide an honest assessment, knowing that every single program is going to be evaluated against all of the BPAs and their appropriate set of results. So one score is not going to make or break a program. And then we asked the department users to enter comments to explain their scores. For you as the peer review teams, this information is going to be really, really helpful as you try to validate or recommend a change in score. The comments are from the department's perspective as experts on their particular set of programs. So now we are entering into phase 2, which is the peer review phase. We put in the peer review phase to evaluate the scores for fairness and consistency. So we are going to ask that each team review and validate the scores for their specific assigned result area. So we have shifted from subject matter expert for a program to you all will be the subject matter experts for your result. We're looking for a consistent and fair approach to the program alignment so that you all feel supported with the data validity for each of the programs. So how do we do this? We have created cross-functional teams. Each team has one result or BPA. We ask that each team schedules 3 60 to 90-minute meetings to go through the scores and recommend the peer review scores. Prior to the meeting, it would be helpful if the teams familiarize themselves with the program inventory and with their specific result and the associated definitions. We'll talk about the template in a few slides, but you will work through an Excel template and identify those programs where you agree with the scores and identify those programs where you would recommend a change. Once you have completed the template, you will send it back to your super users and it will be uploaded into online PBB for final score calculation. Moving into an example, and I will be the first to admit that this is a fairly dramatic example. I pulled this from another client of mine, and I very rarely see such a drastic difference in department score and peer review score, but I think it serves a good purpose for this training. So this is the General Patrol program from a city in Colorado, and their police department went through and scored their programs from the department perspective, and they scored General Patrol a 4 in safe and secure community and a 0 in all other community result areas. So I think from my perspective, it does make sense that this General Patrol program would score a 4 in safe and secure community, but it raised questions for me if General Patrol really and truly had no influence in any of the other result areas. So we're going to look at this as a group and determine if we agree. So we've seen the score from the department self-assessor's perspective, and we're going to switch over and become the peer review team, and we are going to be the subject matter expert for a specific result. So if we look at the results for this particular organization, we have effective and sustainable infrastructure, quality and affordable place to live and work, economic growth, vitality, and sustainability, safe and secure community, environmental awareness and energy conservation, and culture, parks, and recreation. From that high level, it may seem that they got that score of a 4 in safe and secure community correct, but if we start to look at the supporting definitions under each of the other result areas, you can find references to safety and other areas that might be relevant to general patrol. There's safe community in quality and affordable place to live and work, safe structures in safe and secure community. And so we're gonna take a look and see from the perspective of quality and affordable place to live and work, whether we agree with the department scores. So let's take a look at how peer review evaluated this same program. So again, when we're talking about peer review, we're talking about a cross-functional team that was empowered as the subject matter expert for their result. Their job is to review the scores, determine if they agree or recommend a change, and the recommended changes should be based on group consensus, based on an understanding of the influence a program has on the success of one specific result, a consistent approach to applying that result and its associated definitions, and a comparison of programs that scored the same within their result. So we're going to go through those steps, again, from the Quality and Affordable Place to Live and Work peer review team. So looking at just this one result, Quality and Affordable Place to Live and Work, we see the kind of subtitles on the left, which are the headers for each definition. So development, redevelopment, safe community, affordable housing, community involvement, multimodal transportation, culture, arts and recreation, and environment. Within each of those subheadings, there's a more descriptive definition. And upon my review of this, I found that there were several other places within this result where general patrol had some influence. So the department score for general patrol was a 0. It had no influence in quality and affordable place to live and work. However, peer review went through and found that there was influence in some of the other areas of this particular result and changed the score to a 4. One, I think this highlights the importance of peer review to get the data right. But two, it's also really important to know that peer review is not about knocking scores down all the time. It also raises scores. So oftentimes departments can be hard on themselves, and the peer review team is there to make sure that that influence is consistently applied and fairly applied. So looking into this just a little bit further, you can see here that the Place to Live and Work peer review team changed the score from a 0 to a 4. And let's go through some of the questions that they might have had in front of them as they were going through this process. So, did the department get it right? I think from the peer review score, we've determined they did not. Did they understand what the program is or does? So, within the template, you will have access to the program name, the program description, and any comments the department put into the tools. So the description of general patrol in this particular city: routine patrol responding to non-emergency and emergency calls for service. So applying that program description, I think that there are other places within this particular result where there was some influence. So now let's compare this program and where the department scored it and see what else scored similarly. So if we're looking at it from the department perspective, it was scored a 0 in quality and affordable place to live and work, along with print materials, account collections, records management. So in looking at this program in the context of other things that scored a 0 in this result area, does general patrol fit? My answer would be that no, general patrol seems to be more influential on this result than the other programs that scored a 0. So now let's look at it from the peer review perspective. So peer review assigned it a score of 4. Does it make sense in the context of the other programs that scored a 4 that peer review got it right? So general patrol, does it have the same influence on this particular result as 911 emergency dispatch, emergency management, electric systems operations? It does feel like this is a better fit as we start to move through the other programs. So I would say, in this instance, the department was too hard on themselves, and peer review came back in and found the right fit for this general patrol program. So taking that information from what you might accomplish during your meetings, this is a basic outline of what we recommend you do during the time that you'll spend together as a peer review team. So planning for 3 meetings, and I recommend getting those on the calendar, especially as we get into holiday season. Prior to your first meeting, I recommend that you study your team's result and its definitions, that you review all of the programs that are appropriate for that particular result. So if it's a community result, start to review community programs. Governance result, review governance programs. If you are on a basic program attribute team, you'll want to review all of the programs. In this first meeting, go through and identify those programs that you agree upon. Then you can just filter out those programs and begin to focus on what you need to do to come to consensus on the others. If there is any question about what a program is or does, you may need to go back to your super user consultant for your particular result area and ask for clarification. If you don't understand what the program is or does, or you have a question about the comments that the department entered in during their scoring phase, try to do that prior to your second meeting so that you can bring back any additional information that you obtained from your super user, and then go back through all of the programs where you had questions and try to come to consensus then. And then in meeting 3, the purpose of this is to get consensus on all of the programs in your template. We will need to have a score for each one of the programs in the peer review template. And we're going to look at that template in just a second. We recommend that one person on the team serves as kind of the secretary or facilitator so that you have one master template that can be returned to the super user to be uploaded into the tools. Again, to prepare for peer review, get to know your result and its definitions, get to know the program inventory, and then when you first get into your peer review team meeting, determine if the score from the department makes sense based on the definitions within your result and the program's influence on achieving the result. When I talk about recommending a change in score, the peer review score is the score that is going to be taken into account for the final score calculation. The departments have gone through and done their best at evaluating their own programs, but when we take it from the result perspective and you can see the scores for programs throughout the organization, you all have the unique perspective of looking at it from that result view. So don't be afraid of recommending a change in score. We are trying to be consistent and fair. So if you believe that a recommended score change serves this process best, then you need to recommend a change. Again, knowing that programs are going to be evaluated in numerous places, one score change is not going to sink a program or make it the all-star program in the organization. So again, ask your super user if you don't understand what a program is or does, or you are confused by the department's score comments. Decide as a team if you agree with the score or if you would recommend a change. Try not to think about the program's assessment in other result areas. You're there to focus on just your result. Again, don't try to think about whether or not the results are identified correctly or if the definitions are identified correctly. They are what they are, and that's what we're moving forward with. And try not to think about the relevance of the programs being reviewed. We're not there to discuss that. We're simply trying to validate the influence that program has on the successful achievement of your result area. Again, this is an opportunity to look at the programs and services provided by the entire organization. You get to see it through a different lens, and it's a great way to learn more about what the rest of the organization is doing outside of your department. Okay, looking at the template, this is what you will receive. So all of the programs will be listed. You will have a program name, a program description, and the department comments. And then you have the program scores from the department perspective. We are going to work to fill in the peer review score column so that you will be able to see what the department scored it and what you scored it. And if you choose to validate that score and that score is correct, then you can simply filter those out of your vision and you can simply work on those that you need to get a little bit more information of or have more discussion about. All programs must have a numeric score of 0 to 4. So you'll enter your 0 to 4 in this column, and then there is a column to the right of this department comments for peer comments. If you do recommend a change in score and you want to explain why, you can enter that information in the peer comments column. Any other comments that you have as you go through the peer review process, please enter those in that comments column, because that will be really useful information for your super users and for the organization as you continue on with your PBB data. So next steps, I believe department scoring is going to be completed by Friday so that we can run the peer review templates and have them distributed to you on Monday. Go ahead and get your team's meetings on the calendar. And then there are several resources for you to reference so that you can begin the program inventory review. So this spreadsheet has been pulled together so that each tab has the appropriate information. So if you are on a community result, you have all of the community programs on one tab, governance is all on one tab, and then the BPAs will have all of the programs on one tab. And then there are spreadsheets that are associated with community governance and BPAs as well. So you will have access to the result, its overall definition, and then the supporting definitions. Okay, that is all I have for peer review training, and I am here to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Liz, I got one for you. Whenever you did the peer review example of the police department, there were 7 different items and 4 of them were checked off. Can you talk about how it's not a mathematical equation as far as it's not the number of boxes that get checked, it's the overall alignment or impact of the program on specific results?
Absolutely, and that's a very good point. So as you were going through, and I'm just going to take a look at this communication and engagement result that's in the bottom left corner. So let's say you have a program and you determine that it has some influence on communication and some influence on communication practices and mediums. So you've checked 2 boxes, 2 definitions the program has some influence on. Now that you've determined that there is some influence, now it's your job to determine what level of influence it has. And just because you've checked 2 boxes doesn't mean it's a 2. It could be that that program is essential to communication by maximizing employee effectiveness by ensuring two-way communication and encouraging input and feedback. It could be essential to that one definition, and therefore you couldn't successfully achieve the overall result of communication engagement without that program, but it really only is influencing two of the definitions. It can still be essential. It can also have some influence on all four of the definitions, but if that program disappeared, you'd still be able to have some success at communication and engagement. So even though there's some influence across all four of the definitions, it still may only be a 2 where it has some influence on the successful achievement of that result. So not a math problem. We're simply trying to identify which definitions it has some influence on so that we can determine its overall influence on the result's successful achievement.
Any other questions from anybody? So just to kind of discuss, Liz had outlined some next steps for us regarding scheduling the meetings for each of your peer review teams. The person from the implementation team that has been assigned to those groups will reach out to each of you guys and schedule them. We will also help with, we'll attend those meetings, we'll serve as a resource for you. So if you have questions about specific scores, about comments, we can be the ones that go and act as a liaison between that peer review team and the departments to get you guys that extra information. Also, we will help with the Excel templates and keeping that so that we ensure that we have at least one person in each group that is able to use the Excel templates. And in addition to them reaching out to you guys to schedule some meetings, I have some spreadsheets that I will forward on either later today or tomorrow, which just kind of shows what Liz has on the screen right now, each of the different results and the definitions under those results, as well as the programs and program definitions.
And Chris, I recorded this and I will get that recording to you before the end of the day.
Well, I guess I just want, Sarah Shore, I just wanted to, on behalf of the implementation team, thank everyone for being here and for participating in peer review.